Let's go to the next question. I think that you addressed most of this content, but I'll ask you anyway. Well, especially because it comes from one of my trainees. During our training, Wendy, we learned that it's necessary to contact our narcissistic patients' vulnerable child mode, yes. Little Mario or little Paula.
Yes.
But how is it possible for us to contact these patients' vulnerable child mode when these patients say such things as, stop talking about little Paula, stop talking about little Juan, or I do not have a little Paula or a little Juan, or I hate it when you tell me that I have an inner little child. Can't you tell that I'm successful and self-confident? Or where did you learn that stupid model? This is from nowhere. This is my last session, Wendy.
Yes. And sometimes when you get that much information, and you will, that's a really excellent question, because it's exactly what happens many times in the treatment room. And so we have to think for a moment. Let's all of us think here on the sideline that what's really happening is they are embarrassed and uncomfortable because they don't want this vulnerable part to show. They are suspicious and mistrustful of your motives because they think this is just what therapists do. You got to go digging into my childhood because that's all you know how to do. And you're not really going to help me with my life that's happening right now. And who cares about my childhood? And I don't even remember my childhood. So there's a lot of shame. There's a lot of fear and mistrust that you're using them, and that there's really nothing substantial, nothing really important about this therapy. So take a moment and breathe and remember that this is what's really happening inside of them. And then you can look at them and say, Joe or Juan, what is it that you really want me to know when you say that? Because I hear the words. I'm not deaf. I hear the words. But I don't know what the meaning is. What is it that you want me to understand about what you're saying right now? Can you be him, Patricia?
Okay, sure.
Yeah. What do you want me to understand about what you're feeling right now?
Well, I'm feeling, I don't feel you get me.
Okay. Well, that must be pretty hard and frustrating.
Well, I don't really care,
Oh, no, you do care, Juan. Don't shut down. You were just there. Stay there. It's okay. You do care. And it's okay to care, because that's a pretty important theme in your life, that someone really understands you and is really on your side. And if this therapy feels like it's just another way of someone using you or not seeing you or taking you for some wild ride into your childhood that doesn't matter, then let's talk about the therapy. Let's talk about what it's really aiming to do. Because I don't want to be. I'm not your mother. I'm not one of those people who doesn't see you. I do see you, and I want you to feel like I see you.
No, come on. I'm tired of having everybody, all therapists, talk about our mothers. I don't want to talk about my mother anymore. I did that, in a prior therapy, so many. I've done so many. My wife, just asked me to go to so many therapists. I'm sick and tired of therapists.
I hear that. And I don't want to talk about your mother either. But you did tell me about her, and I'm just referring to the fact that you had an experience, whether you like it or not. You may not want to talk about it, but she lives inside of you. She's part of your experience. Therefore, she's part of your memory. Therefore, she's part of what happens under certain conditions. I'm not blaming her. I'm not saying she's bad. I'm saying that you learned things about yourself from her and from your experiences with her that didn't always meet your needs.
Well, maybe.
Yeah, well, it's a start. You accept that possibility?
Could be.
Yeah, it's actually in the science. It's how memory works. You're a pretty smart guy, and I think you know that. So I don't think it's about the intelligence around this, because you're smart. I think it's something else emotional, something deeper. I'm wondering how uncomfortable it is for you to show me that part of yourself that can feel scared. You're not used to that, are you?
No. Yeah, you know me. Wendy, you know me. I'm successful. I'm a surgeon.
Well, that's a part
I'm
of
very
you.
good, you know. I mean, people come to me to ask me questions, and I know I have to know everything. I cannot just show them, you know, my little child.
Yes, but one, yes. I'm not asking you to show your patients your little child. I'm asking you just to do that right now with me, because I know you're a brilliant surgeon and you're successful. But I also know there's other parts of you. That's not the only part of you. Sometimes you take your lab coat off and you go home. Sometimes you take your surgical scrubs off and you go home. And there's other parts to you. And they're equally important.
Okay, maybe.
So this is an example of how we begin. Notice I'm persistent. I don't give up on this. I'm going to persist at making sure that I can continue to work towards this theme of not being seen. But notice he's not angry anymore. He wants to detach and he wants to just talk about his wonderfulness, but he's not angry anymore about the therapy, because it's really not an issue of whether or not, you know, the therapy is good therapy. It's an issue of how uncomfortable or how much a waste of time it might seem, because again, it's being taken advantage of, being misunderstood, which is the story of the life of many narcissists.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Wendy. I want to tell everybody that it was a totally impromptu role. We did not plan it, okay?
Those are the best ones. The best ones are not planned.
That's right. Thank you. Okay, I've had my share of narcissistic patients, and I know people I know, so I think I can play them, you know, quite well. Okay, so next question. What happens with the love relationships of our narcissistic patients? Many of them choose very attractive, much younger partners and or famous partners who have power, fame, and or money. In the beginning, they idealize their partners, but later on, they devalue them. Would you please share with us why narcissists idealize these partners first and devalue them at a later time, and even be unfaithful to them? And the following, the follow-up questions: how can we help our narcissistic patients when this happens? And oftentimes they also begin to wonder where they should stay or they should leave these relationships.
You mean the partners of the narcissist, whether they should stay or leave?
Well, or the narcissists themselves, that sometimes, you know, after they devalue their partners, they don't know if they want to stay or leave.
They, you know, the narcissists don't typically leave relationships unless they already have someone lined up. So because of their loneliness and isolation issues, they don't usually walk away unless they already have another partner that they're ready to connect with, or they have many partners that they can connect with, or they have a lot of fans and followers, you know, who are out there following them around looking for the goodies. But they don't leave. Partners are more likely to leave than the narcissists themselves. They will choose, the narcissist will choose the perfect partner, or younger partners, trophy wives, celebrities, because it makes them look good, right? It's all about the resume. It's all about how do I look to the world? They also choose lovely, wonderful people. They sometimes choose the most perfect partners who could love them if they let them, who could care for them and even reparent them in many ways if they let them, but they don't let them. They end up either abusing them or ignoring them or cheating on them. So whether it's the trophy partner or it's a partner who may not be a trophy partner, but is a really lovely partner in many, many ways. They're like a child. They don't have the attention span for relationship. They don't really intimately connect to anyone. And so that inability to really intimately connect, to really know someone, to get into their inner world, leaves them, their partners are like a new toy. You know how, those of you who have little children or you've been around little children, you give them a new shiny toy and it's fun and they hold it and they don't want to share it and it's all theirs and they're so proud of it and they're curious and distracted and they take good care of it. And then before you know it, they're throwing it in the corner looking for another new shiny toy. The narcissist has a very short attention span in relationship. And because they're always looking to stimulate themselves, soothe themselves, distract themselves, entertain themselves, when they feel alone and lonely, because they can't take advantage of real intimacy, because they don't know how to do that so well. They devalue it, in fact, because they're not good at it. And so relationships become very easily sabotaged.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Wendy. Excellent reply. So now I have a question from my Latin American trainees. So this is a cultural question.
Yeah.
The question is, in some of our Latin American countries, we find what we could name a cultural time entitlement. It is frequent that people show up late for dates or appointments, cancel meetings at the last moment without having had a real emergency, cannot commit to a scheduled meeting, and prefer to play it by ear. They even get upset if the person they're supposed to meet expresses their discontent. In those situations, narcissistic individuals may criticize them, calling them names such as exaggerated, structured, or rigid. In therapy, narcissistic patients often ignore and challenge our cancellation policies and/or expect us not to charge them for a missed session. They even expect us to make up for their lost time if they're late. Would you say that the tendency to have this cultural time entitlement is more frequent among narcissists?
Yes, in fact it is, but it's a double standard. So here's what happens. It's not equal. In other words, they will have no tolerance for your lateness if they scheduled the appointment. You better be on time for them. But if you're expecting them, they can feel, my meeting was important. I couldn't get here on time. I had to take a phone call. The traffic was heavy, so I decided to stop for coffee. They feel entitled to break the rule, to make the rule, but you better follow the rule because they are entitled to your worship and to your servancy when it comes to them. And so again, I just emphasize the idea that it is so important when the patient is demanding extra time when they're late or they're not paying the fee or not the whole fee because they're late or they had to cancel at the last minute because a work thing came up, that you don't give in to that demand. Have a solid agreement in place at the very beginning of therapy, a policy, a guideline about, what you are expecting in the therapy relationship, what your policy is. And when they'll fight you on it anyway, even if you talk about it. But when they do, you have to remember to remind them that, like this, Joe, our therapy relationship is really important for your healing, for your welfare. I make my living seeing you. This is not me being defensive. This is me explaining again to you how it works. This is your spot. It's reserved for you and you alone. And if you miss this spot, it's your responsibility to care for the fee because that's how I make a living. I don't want to feel resentful. And if I give in, like everyone else does in your life, I'll be one more person who feels resentful. That's not your fault. That will be my responsibility. So I'm going to be responsible to protect our relationship from resentment and to protect you from behaviors that I know you don't know how to be uncomfortable. I know it's hard for you to deal with frustration. I deal with frustration all the time in my work. Yes, you do, but not in relationships. This is different. And it's hard for you to hear someone say no, or for someone to hold the line, or to put the rules in place. But you have to follow the same rules as everybody else, or our therapy relationship cannot work. Oh, then I've had it. Okay, that's your prerogative, that's your privilege, that's your choice. You're not a hostage. I wish you wouldn't just give up And I think there's probably something else going on that we could talk about, some deeper meaning. Just remember the consequences of giving up. It could mean problems in your relationship. It could mean the end of your job. So you raise the bar. It's not a threat. You're just reminding them of the real consequences at stake. You're enforcing the limits, and you're also being very self-disclosing and honest about the fact that the only way to protect the therapy relationship is to follow the rules. That doesn't mean that if, God forbid, Joe was in a car accident, couldn't get there, I wouldn't be flexible. Of course I would. But narcissists will use every excuse to try to bend the rules because they feel entitled, and you don't want to get caught in the trap of colluding with their entitlement, giving into it. We have to meet a need, and that means to set a limit and help Joe to deal with that frustration and to be respectful.
Great. Thank you so much, Wendy.
Sure.
It was very helpful to know how to address these difficult clinical situations in everyday practice. So really interesting. So I think that we may ask you the last question. We have a few minutes, like 3 minutes actually. So I know it's a lot to ask to answer this one in 2 minutes, but just maybe a summary. In Dr. Jeffrey Young's book, Reinventing Your Life, Dr. Young talks about entitlement, dependent type, and entitlement impulsivity type. Would you please share with us the clinical presentation of these two different types of entitlement, and briefly, what are the clinical strategies a schema therapist should choose?
Yeah, again, it goes back to the needs. So when you hear dependent type, what you're thinking about is a narcissist who has been perhaps just had everything done for them. So it's the one where they get into trouble. Their parents are always making excuses or cleaning up the mess. And the need is about taking responsibility, taking risk, being able to be accountable, make their own decisions. And in these everyday situations, they can usually make big decisions in the workplace. But again, it just gives you clues about the need. If it's the impulsive type, it's probably because there wasn't good limit setting. And so they're always interrupting you when you're talking. They're just blurting things out. They're acting very, spontaneously, but sometimes even in ways that can be dangerous. And so you can use examples in the treatment room when you have impulsive narcissists who just interrupt. They call it conversational narcissism. They're constantly interrupting you, that you have a policy, that when they interrupt, you're going to stop them and say, "You're doing it again, Joe. What's happening inside of you? What's happening when I speak and I'm starting to say something. I can't finish my sentence. You're jumping in. Well, I'm afraid I'm going to lose my thought. Okay, I'll give you some paper and you can write it down while I'm talking." Right? Or if you lose it, maybe it will come back. But to sit with that and just listen. I'll take moments and stop and say, "What did you hear me say?" You can do reflective work with them when they have impulsivity issues. Some of them have comorbid diagnoses like ADD. And so their attentional span is poor and they're more hyperactive even. Mm-hmm. So you want to do a thorough assessment, and you especially want to assess the need, because that will determine where you're going to place your attention.
Great. Thank you so much, Wendy. And thank you for bringing up the clinical issue of comorbidities, because yes, sometimes we have patients who have ADHD as well. And many times we know that ADHD has been underdiagnosed, in most countries. And so I think that that's very important. But of course, we have the narcissistic piece as well. So it's very interesting how to address it. Thank you so much. Mm-hmm. So we have 4 minutes to go, and so I just would like to thank you, Wendy, very, very much for such a rich presentation, so clear, so practical, so clinical. So you covered so many different clinical challenges, and we really, really hope to have you with us again very, very soon to talk about narcissism or to talk about any other topics related to schema therapy. So I'm sorry, let me go back to Spanish. Agradezco nuevamente a todos por haber asistido a este evento científico y esperemos que les haya sido útil. Y si les resultó útil o interesante, por favor, les agradecemos que comenten acerca de esta presentación en sus redes sociales, así otros colegas pueden también conocer este efectivo modelo de terapia de esquemas que es tan útil para trabajar con estos pacientes. Y ahora, antes de despedirnos, les voy a pedir a todos que pongan su pantalla de Zoom en modo galería y que abran sus micrófonos si lo desean, así podemos saludarnos y despedirnos. Somos todos colegas de distintas partes del mundo y sé que el 2020 ha sido un año difícil para todos. Así que les deseo que disfruten lo más posible de estas fiestas, que sigan ayudando a todos los que sufren, especialmente en estos momentos de pandemia, y también les deseo que tengan el mejor año 2021. Hasta pronto.
Igualmente, un beso.
Muchas gracias.
Gracias.
Thank you, everybody.
Gracias.
Wendy. Thank you very much.
Gracias a todos.
Patricia.
Excelente,
Muchas gracias.
So much.
Buen año para todos.
Gracias. A Wendy.
Thank you, Wendy. Gracias, Patricia.
Excelente.
Gracias.
Thank you, Wendy.
Gracias, Wendy, Patricia.
Adiós. Gracias.
Excelente, gracias.
Abrazos.
Muchas gracias, Patricia.
Merry
Excelente.
Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Thank you very much, Wendy. Muchas gracias, Patricia.
My pleasure. Bye, everybody.
Buon Natale, Wendy. Felicidades a todos.
Gracias,
Igualmente.
Leticia. Gracias.
Muchas gracias. Un placer fue.
Thank you very much, Wendy.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
It was very clear, very clear.
Bye.
Bye, bye.
Buen año para todos.
Gracias, Patricia.
Igualmente, gracias para todos. Gracias, Patricia.
Gracias.
Muchas gracias.
Gracias, Patricia, por invitarnos.
De nada.
Muchas gracias, Patricia. Excelente.
Gracias por
chat.
venir.
Muy bueno.
Muchas
Gracias, Patricia.
Muchas gracias.